Welcome back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be jumping through a story highlighting the continuing, ongoing, beginning of, because it's a new stage, of the battle between Elon Musk and the EU. And we'll see if there is new wrinkles that Elon is taking advantage of here, or if it's the exact same old griping that he has done with the European Commission for a long time. So, with that said, let's jump into our daily debate. Should X uphold our laws, our version of free speech, as the world standard, or should it apply the rules of the society that it's in to the country that it's operating in, to the version of X that's operating in that country more accurately? I want to know your opinion. Throw it down there in the comment section. Should India have Indian Twitter? Should Japan have Japan Twitter? Or should everybody just have Twitter? It puts a lot of pressure on the U.S. to stay ahead of the curve. But hey, maybe I'm crazy. Throw down your comments in the comment section. Now let's actually jump in to the article. Today it comes from our friends at The Verge. Headline reads, X cuts off the European Commission's ad account after being fined 120 million euros. So when the EU decides, and I say the EU most broadly because there are obviously different entities within the EU, different boards, commissions, much like there are safety boards, there's military boards, there's committees upon committees. In the US, there are also such things in the EU, but the EU itself is the one that levied the fine of 120 million euros against X. And they did so for violating the, quote, Digital Services Act. But we're going to speak the most broad terms here. We're not going to try to drill down on any particular committee, subcommittee, or any particular lawmakers who have been the most vocal against, especially some in the Netherlands. There have been some in France who are very, very vocal about making sure that Twitter, aka X, complies with their version of free speech, how they deal with consumer privacy. They're one of the governments pushing the most for less manipulative online practices, full rejection of cookies being an option in the US is the standard that has been adopted and forced upon many companies in the EU first. So there's lots of health and safety concerns. There's lots of techniques and specific practices that the EU has forced companies into. And in the case of Twitter, they're trying to do the exact same here. Quote, it was the first time that a company has been hit with a penalty for running afoul of the law. Elon Musk responded with his trademark tact professionalism by posting BS on X. And obviously, it's not actually the word BS, but for the sake of YouTube, BS. Quote, but that wasn't the end, because just a day later, Nikita Bayer, X's head of product, accuses the commission of abusing an exploit to boost the reach of the announcement and responded by shutting down its ad account. Now, what is the actual violation that's going on here? Why is it a huge issue? We're going to actually extend to another article that is hyperlinked in the article that I mentioned at the top, and the link to that article will be in the description below, like and subscribe button, and therefore you can find the hyperlink. It is hyperlinked under the section that says $120 million fine. The penalty is for violating the block's digital service rulebook, in part for deceptive design of its blue check marks. Quote, today's announcement marks the first time that it has a company been found of violating the DSA law for curbing illegal and harmful activities on online platforms. And what they're saying is that the blue check mark is not actually a good pattern of verified. A person can buy it, but also technically a robot could buy it in theory, or at least the user of the robot could buy it, and therefore make it appear as though the people with blue check marks are real, having valid conversations. They're not just sitting there as little chatbots going around and trolling people. And the point of it is actually less important. And what I mean is the specific point on which they're trying to get Elon. Why might that be? Because just like with Apple, they had plenty of reasons. The EU had plenty of reasons in order to crack down on Apple. They chose one in which it would directly affect their product that they felt they had the largest legal ground on, and it was more to get the companies to bend the knee. And maybe this is a cynical perspective on my part, but the EU has many, many standards, many, many different rules than the rest of the world. They are a mainly first world union of nations that is concerned with lots of safety issues, privacy issues, all concerns that not everybody has time to worry about in different nations. Not all of the lawmakers care in those nations, and not all the people care in those nations. When you have to worry about making ends meet, do you really care about whether or not Facebook is taking your data? No. These are concerns of a society that has worked hard to get where they are and is well off. But they are also one that is more than willing to stifle innovation because they have the products that have gotten to them to where they need to be, and they don't need new innovation in order to continue to grow. To stay on top of the heap, sure, but in general, they're going to bend towards safety, which is more likely going to put restrictions on people rather than ease the load on them and allow them to continue to innovate. That's why the U.S. in the late 1800s, early 1900s was coming into a period of the quote-unquote Wild West, or coming out of the period of the quote-unquote Wild West. And yet that ethos of, okay, we're going to break things, we're going to keep moving forward, we're going to push boundaries. We don't have too many established interests that want to keep their things locked in and on top and will fight for their position. We didn't have a whole bunch of safety boards that were asking questions of, oh, is this the right thing to do? How will it affect our citizens? We simply let the technology flow. The EU is back to its normal games of asking these questions, throwing around the weight. As individual nations, they would not have enough power to throw around and say, hey, Elon, you got to listen here. But as the EU, they're able to do it. And since they all have this similar safety mindset, this is defining the beginning of the future battle, which is Elon Musk going to stay on message? As he said before, we will obey the laws of the places that we operate. Even if he doesn't like their decisions, he'll push back. He'll try to find a legal remedy within that nation, but he will actually abide by the rules in that place, versus someone like a Jack Dorsey who was more amenable to idealism, fighting for the ideals that Twitter and X back in the day were meant to embody, which is free speech regardless of government intervention. Less willing to ban people because the government said so, less willing to algorithmically affect their, and let's be clear, there's no actual proof that Elon is algorithmically boosting any sort of content in any given place simply because of his politics. I'm sure there's accusations, and most of the algorithm, at least last time I checked, though of course it can't change, it was open source, and it was really favoring of Elon. So if Elon retweets somebody, that would actually have a large effect on getting them views, like people in the ADF in Germany. But that doesn't mean that the algorithm underlying the system itself was actually intentionally biased towards those sort of operations, political parties, so on and so forth. Will Elon buckle? I mean, based on his baloney comment, I think he's going to talk loud, and then behind the scenes he's going to find a way to comply, or at least fight it in court and make sure that he's not going to face too many terrible financial repercussions to his actions any more than they already are. Because stripping people of the blue check mark, stripping that model out where you have to pay for it rather than it being verified based on identity, following, so on and so forth, that would be a large loss of some of the revenue, the recurring revenue that Twitter and X has. And in order to just comply with with the EU, maybe they do it in the EU only, where they return to a different model. Maybe they say, you have to do an extra step of identity verification. These are all interesting questions that Elon's going to have to answer in order to come in compliance with the EU. And maybe he's going to say, it's not worth it. First principles, this stuff, let's redo it. Maybe he'll just say, you know what, I don't want to say the actual word. You guys need to go kick rocks. So we'll see how it pans out. We'll see if Elon's stubborn streak continues to be the thing that both makes him lovable by so many libertarians and dreadfully annoying by so many lawmakers. So with that, if you want to listen to any episodes in the future, you can follow over at the podcast with the links down in the description on Spotify, Podcast, Podvine, as well as Apple Podcast. You can go to the Twitter handle at your DailyFlip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the 6 and 6 podcast, which is the international focus podcast, on Tuesday and Thursday. This week, at the end of the week, is going to be a little bit different. We're doing some switch ups. There's a trip happening, so I'm not going to be able to do live news as much, so the intent is to do a few different styles of episode, or at least different topics than normal. And if you want to read today's article in its entirety, it'll be linked in the description below. Like and subscribe button. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.